Hey friends, we're back with American Miscellany, and we are now on essay 124, and it starts off with an engraving, so let's take a moment to enjoy this lovely engraving entitled View of the Old City Hall, Wall Street, New York. So this book, American Miscellany, was published in 1865. The contents have been advertised to be historical and scientific, so we'll see how this one goes. We've just finished essay number 123 on the secret of success. I don't think we learned much there. No, always something different with American Miscellany. So there's the engraving, and this book is old and big and dramatic, so I'll be super careful with it. You can see that the front cover there is not holding up well, but it is beautiful. I don't know if you can get a good look at it there. Let's see the beautiful embossed leather. 161 years old at this point. So let's see what they had to say about Old Wall Street in New York. We are on page 298 of this venerable tome. Essay number 124 from American Miscellany. It's called The Old City Hall, New York. The Old City Hall in Wall Street, at the head of Broad Street, has been faithfully copied from an engraving published by Tiebout in 1789. So that's Tiebout. Tiebout, published by Tiebout in 1789. It had been a short time previously enlarged and improved for the reception and accommodation of the first Congress convened under the new Constitution of the United States. In compiling the annexed succinct history of its predecessors, we have drawn largely from the original records of the Common Council. The first Stadhuis was erected by the Dutch while in possession of the colony of New Netherlands and the city of New Amsterdam, under the jurisdiction of a Schout, Burgomaster, and Schepen. Hudson came up to the island of Manhattan, called by the natives Mandoes, in the month of October 1609, then occupied by a ferocious tribe of Indians. He navigated as high as Albany, and on his return to Holland transferred his right of discovery to the Dutch, who afterward granted it to their West India Company. The latter the next year sent ships to Manhattan to trade with the natives. In 1614, a fort was built by the Dutch at the southwest extremity of the island, and also another called Fort Orania, or Orange, where Albany now stands, which was settled before the city of New Amsterdam, the latter probably not permanently occupied until the year 1619. From this period, it remained in possession of the Dutch until the conquest of the colony by the English in 1664. A few years after, it was granted by Charles II to his brother James, Duke of York and Albany, and the two principal, indeed only cities at the time in the colony, were called after him, New York and Albany. The date of the erection of the Stadhuis is not ascertained, but more likely it was shortly after the settlement of New Amsterdam. It was, as were most of the houses of that period, built of bricks called clinkers, imported from Holland as ballast for merchant vessels. Few specimens of these early structures now remain here, but several yet exist in Albany. The style of architecture, with steep tiled roofs, gables to the streets, and alleys between the houses, was Spanish, introduced by that nation into Flanders, now Belgium, while that populous portion of the Netherlands was possessed by Spain. In consequence of the long protracted civil and religious wars between Spain and Holland, which terminated in the independence of the latter, a more rancorous antipathy existed on the part of the Dutch of New Netherlands against the Spaniards, which was scarcely obliterated from the minds of their descendants until the American Revolution. Evidence of this fact is to be seen in the history throat doesn't want to read. Okay. Evidence of this fact is to be seen in the history of the famous Negro plot in 1741, when the absurd idea was propagated and believed that it was instigated by the Spaniards of South America. Indeed, the predatory wars of the English against Spanish Americans, privateering and buccaneering, fostered this early prejudice. To kill or plunder a Spaniard was regarded neither robbery nor murder. What dreadful principles to cherish in a civilized nation! About the year 1695, the Stadthouse began to require repairs adequate to render it safe for the meetings of the Court of Common Council and of the Supreme Court. After several surveys and profound deliberations, the Hogan-Mogans of the day determined that it was most expedient, as well as economical, to build a new city hall at the head of Broad Street and to lease or sell the old one. No lessee offering, it was sold at auction to Mr. John Rodman, merchant, for £920, equal to $2,300. £3,000 or $7,500 were appropriated towards building the new city hall, a large sum in those days, to be raised by direct tax on a population not exceeding 5,000. The Stadthouse, or First City Hall, was situated in Dock, now Pearl Street, at the corner of Coenties Countess's Lane. The site of the new city hall was laid on a bastion and line of stone fortifications that extended across the northern boundary of the city from the east to Hudson River, whence the name of Wall Street is derived. This appears by a petition of the corporation to Lieutenant Governor Lieutenant Governor Hanfen and His Majesty's Council to intercede with the Earl of Bellamont, the governor then absent at Boston, for permission, as the fortifications were dilapidated, to make use of the stones for building a new city hall, which, no doubt, was granted. No ceremony appears to have taken place on laying the foundation, which was probably in the spring of 1700, and the Common Council held its first meetings there in the summer of 1703. This edifice, for a long time the most magnificent in the city, was frequently improved and embellished until the Revolutionary War. While in possession of the British, it was occupied for the main guard, and escaping the ravages of the enemy, it remained entire, although much injured, until the evacuation of the city by the British forces on the 25th of November, 1783. A room was appropriated in the hall for the use of the New York Society Library, founded in 1754, whose collection of books, though not extensive, was select and valuable, and was totally plundered by the British. The present library was renewed in 1789. A chamber also contained a large stand of arms and equipments purchased by the corporation in 1764, which were seized by the Whigs on the Sunday afternoon when the news of the Battle of Lexington, 19th of April, 1775, arrived, and threw the city into the utmost consternation. The chief persons concerned in the seizure, viz. Colonel Isaac Sears, Colonel John Lamb, McDougall, Willett, and others, were the Liberty Boys. There is an asterisk there right after Liberty Boys. So let's go ahead and read that. The Sons of Liberty. The success of that great struggle for liberty, the American Revolution, which was by the many supposed hopeless, and which present historians deem almost miraculous, was brought about by the courage and perseverance of a few indomitable spirits, whom no labor could weary or danger appall. And it was by their moral courage, perseverance, and intrepidity that this great revolution was begun, continued, and ended. In the year 1765, Colonel Isaac Sears, afterwards better known by the name of King Sears, a man of great personal intrepidity, forward in dangerous enterprises, and ready at all times to carry out the boldest measures, became the originator and leader of the patriotic band, who associated themselves together under the name of the Sons of Liberty. Their organization, before I continue, King Sears, by the way, this book, American Miscellany, was published by Robert Sears. So I wonder, the Sears name has appeared several times now in these almost 300 pages. So there you go. There's King Sears now. Okay. So all right, we've got the Sons of Liberty. Let's see. Okay, he was the leader of the patriotic band who associated themselves together under the name of the Sons of Liberty. Their organization soon pervaded every part of the colonies and was the germ of the Revolution. By their intrepidity, the spirit of the masses was aroused, and by their persevering industry and zeal, the people were excited to oppose all efforts to enslave them. These bold spirits formed the nucleus of the future armies of the Revolution, and it is to the moral courage which they displayed and the indomitable resolution with which they braved all danger that the world is indebted for the illustrious example set by the infant colonies to Europe, and the foundation of a great and glorious republic. So, I don't know, hopefully those will be instructions soon enough. Okay, so we've got the Liberty Boys, so-called, who immediately assembled in Van Dyck's Ball Alley, northeast corner of Broadway and John Street. Sorry, we should probably read that sentence again. Okay, the chief persons concerned in the seizure, viz. Colonel Isaac Sears, Colonel John Lamb, McDougall, Willett, and others were the Liberty Boys, so-called, who immediately assembled in Van Dyck's Ball Alley, northeast corner of Broadway and John Street, and formed a company which patrolled the city to prevent any disturbances. Their parole was Boston, countersign Lexington. This was the first resort to arms in the province of New York. No city or state in the Union suffered in proportion to New York, a frontier at both extremities, exposed on the north to the predatory incursions of the Canadians and Indians, while its capital at the south was nearly 1/5 desolated by the awful conflagration on the 21st of September, 1776, shortly after its occupation by the British, who kept possession until the Peace of 1783. At the evacuation on the 25th of November, the Patriot families returned after a tedious and distressing exile of 7 long years to mourn over their homes devastated or in ruins, their fortunes reduced by a depreciated currency, with little remaining to reestablish themselves in the enjoyment of their former plain but redundant comforts. They are descendants of the present day, and the enterprising inhabitants of this commercial emporium of the ocean and the lakes can but feebly estimate the privations and sufferings of the anti-revolutionary families, whose survivors may say, as Augustus did of Rome, "We found our city in bricks, and leave it in marble." May they never lose sight of the plain, simple frugality and virtues of those progenitors whose word was their bond and whose morals were irreproachable. In the fall of 1784, the Revolutionary Congress removed to this city, and the courtroom and the city hall was fitted for their use. On the adoption of the new Constitution, more extensive accommodations were required for the Senate and House of Representatives about to convene in the city, for which purpose the old edifice was entirely renovated, and an extensive addition made in the rear. The Senate chamber was in the former, and that for the House of Representatives in the latter. The expenses of these extensive improvements were defrayed by lottery. Major L'Enfant, a French engineer of great abilities in the service of the United States during the war, was the architect, and his skill and taste displayed in this edifice were universally admired, and gave the chief spring to a more improved style of architecture in public buildings throughout the United States. In the spring of 1789, the first Congress under the new Constitution assembled in this city and met in the new edifice. On the 30th of April, George Washington was inaugurated the first president in the gallery in front of the Senate chamber, in view of an immense concourse of citizens collected in Broad Street. The doors, windows, and roof of every house were thronged with exulting spectators. The oath of office was administered by Chancellor Livingston on a superb quarto Bible, then belonging to the Grand Lodge of the State of New York, which is carefully preserved by St. John's Lodge, No. 1, having the following inscription imprinted in gold letters on its cover, of an event so auspicious to the prosperity and happiness of the United States. On this sacred volume, on the 30th day of April, A.M. 5789, in the city of New York, was administered to George Washington, the first President of the United States of America, the oath to support the Constitution of the United States. This important ceremony was performed by the most worshipful Grand Master of Free and Accepted Masons of the State of New York, the Honorable Robert R. Livingston, Chancellor of the State. Fame stretched her wings, and with her trumpet blew. George Washington is near. What praise is due? What title shall he have? She paused and said, "Not one. His name alone strikes every title dead." The standard belonging to the 2nd Regiment of the New York Artillery, held near the President on the occasion, is still in possession of the corporation of the city, which presented another elegant stand of colors to the regiment in exchange. May the Bible and standard be preserved and transmitted to future generations as proud memorials of this important epoch in our national history. This edifice, becoming superannuated, requiring constant and expensive repairs, and moreover not conveniently adapted for the increasing courts and municipal offices, was, after the building of the third present marble city hall at the head of the park, the pride of the city and admiration of every visitor, demolished in 1812, and the site laid out in lots and sold to private individuals. The United States afterward purchased buildings upon the site for a custom house, which in its turn became too confined and inconvenient for the immensely growing commercial operations of the city, and has been replaced by the present splendid and more commodious structure.